Hello everybody, hi guys, Kirk here. Thank you for joining me on another video on my channel. In this video we're just going to set up a simple scene or project if you like in Unreal Engine 5, and we're just going to basically add plugins that we're going to be using in future on this channel, and change a few settings and show you a few tips and tricks that I do introduce into my workflow when starting a new project. So as you can see, I've got scene 1 here set up. That is just pre-done, ready for tutorials, but I am going to create a fresh scene right now to show you what I have done in that. So I'm just going to hit launch on the engine here and just wait for this to start up. Should only take a matter of seconds. Okay, so now we're started up with the project launcher. What we have here is a few tabs down the side. If you're not understanding what these are with the templates inside, and you haven't watched my series on getting started with UE5, the card's at the top now, and I'd recommend you go and watch it. But with this scene setup, project setup, we are going to choose the third-person template for the mannequin. We'll leave it as blueprint, desktop, maximum fidelity on the quality, and include the starter content. Now I'm just going to rename this to scene setup, and then we are going to press create. Okay, as you can see, we've now loaded into our third person template. At the bottom right, instantly you'll see project files out of date. Would you like to update? Yes. You may also have a pop-up box that says about plugins, but we'll get around to that. Just ignore that for now, it'll drop off. So the first things I do when starting up a new project is I sort my folder structure out to get myself started. What we need to do is basically click third person, mannequin and level prototyping, and click and hold and drag them into the starter content folder. Yes, don't worry about that, just click yes. Just warnings regarding blueprints and other jazzy stuff. As you can see, these two folders are left over, don't worry about them right now. On your content browser, here at the side, your content folder, if you right click on that folder and click fix up redirectors, that just basically redirects all the address bars inside the other folders into this one, so the project works quicker and better. Then we're going to click back on content and we can just delete these folders right now, like so. And now you have just the one structure, the one folder, which is starter content. We're going to right click on that. I'm going to set the colour, which I generally have this set straight to black. It's just the way I've always done things. And then we're going to create a new folder and call this scene setup. As you can see, I've got a dash in my name. You can do it with the folders inside the engine itself, but you just can't use it in your project name. What I'm also going to advise is if you go back to the front of your name before you press enter, if you press a 1, add 1 and then another dash up to you, and then press click. And what this does is later on in your project, when you add assets in this this area here, or we could click on it, all this will be full of folders. Absolutely jam-packed with folders once you've started adding certain assets and projects in to help you complete your task in the editor. This will be full, and with me putting a 1 in front of the name, this will make sure my folder that I've created is right at the top of all that list. What I'm also going to do is right click it, set the colour, a new colour, and I will make this green. Yeah, so 0 on the red, 1 on the green and 0 on the blue, and that'll make it pure green. so now I've got a green folder. It's very easy seen compared to the black. And then I'm going to right click it again and add to favorites, and what that is going to do is enable me to drop the scene setup folder structure and open just the favorites, where I will just have mine. So going back to what I said before, when you add assets, this side will get very full very quickly in here. So you'll have your folder at the top, but you'll still have a load of other folders from assets you've imported. So adding the certain folders that you're going to use in your scene to a favourite, that will enable you to close that down and just keep it a bit more organised in this left hand side here. So we're going to open this up. I'm going to create a new level from here, and it's going to be an empty level. And the reason I'm creating a basic empty level is when you've added your plugins and you have added certain changes to the project, it's going to require you to restart, and then you will have to compile all your shaders, and that will take some time, so I would like you to prepare yourself for that. So moving on from there, I've now got this new level set up. We're going to save it real quick. We're going to save it into our new folder. We can call it scene setup map. Yeah, and that's going to save in your scene setup. There's a reason for this. I'll show you shortly. Well, I'll show you now. If you, like I said earlier, if you're unaware of all this you're seeing in the screen, go back to the getting started with Unreal Engine 5. That's on my channel, and I go through all of this in a bit of detail compared to other tutorials you may see. That's why the video is 45 minutes long. But you'll then come out of that video with a decent understanding of the UI. So starting off, we're going to go to Edit. We're going to open Editor Preferences to start off with. Just one change in here I like to make. On the left hand side there, you'll see the tab All Settings. If you click on that, this just basically shows you all the settings in the editor. I'm not going to go through that right now. What I'm going to type is Editor. And what this does, the Asset Editor Open Location. If I change this to Main Window, then any kind of material, blueprint, any shader or textures or anything of that description, it will open up in the main window. I'll just quickly show you that real quick. So if I do this, go on to materials, choose a random material. If I double click this now, it will just open it here at the top, so you can still skip to your scene as well as the material. I'll just let me back out of there because I've pressed play. Otherwise, if you didn't do that, it would open this in full screen and you'd like this, and then you'd have to move it, and it's just a better workflow if you need that, other than having multiple screens open. I prefer it much up here, but like I say, that's just my workflow and what I like to do. So we're going to back out of there. Now we've got that set up, we're going to go to Edit again. We're going to go to Project Settings. In here you can select an icon which will display, like at the beginning of my video. So I can fire this one in. It may say to you incorrect size, depending on the size of your image, but don't worry about that, it'll still display. Then from there, on the left hand side here, you can see we're on the description side of the project. If we go to Maps and Modes, you have an Editor Startup map and a Game Default map. We are going to scroll this up because I know my content drawer is going to come up. And where the new map we've created in our scene setup, in here, we're just going to drag that into them. And what this is going to do now, every time we press play, it will load this map, or every time we start up the project from our windows, it will load up this map what we have saved. This is going to change later on in the video, but you'll see why. With the new UE5 or Unreal Engine 5 setup in rendering, also this, if you hold the top bar like you can in Windows, right to the top, it opens it in full. But with the new Unreal Engine Preview 2, a lot of these rendering settings are set as default, which to their best. So like in Unreal Engine 4 you had to change and load of these settings to get max fidelity and kind of next gen visibility and lighting. But now you don't have to do all that. So we'll just quickly fire through them really quick. So mobile, we don't need that. Materials, auto, that's set right. Culling, that's culling distance, we'll go through that in another video. Texture streaming, leave texture streaming enabled, we will need that. Virtual textures, so you have enabled virtual texture support. I've got words muddled up. If we enable that, it will ask you to restart, but don't restart just yet. This basically enables us to blend any kind of 3D mesh with the landscape, but you'll see that in action in a later video. So do enable that. Workspace color space, working color space, sorry, that default's fine. Global illumination uses the Lumen engine now, which is great. Otherwise you'd have to change a load of parameters here as well, so we can ignore that. Reflections is fine, Lumen is fine. You have global tracing and detailed tracing. Global tracing is a bit more easier on performance, but it still does a good job. Detailed tracing is, I would probably add that if you are adding ray trace to your scene, but only add ray tracing and global tracing together if you have a high power machine. So global tracing is fine for now. Shadows, this is a new addition, virtual shadow maps. It's basically like the virtual textures, but they use it for shadows now. Just helps with performance. It used to be on just shadow maps, but the virtual shadow maps is better. Ray tracing, we've not got anything on here. Virtual shadow, that's fine. Lighting, that's fine, yeah. Default's fine. Forward rendering's fine. Translucency's fine. That's what I mean, a lot of these we're not going to use VR. Post processing, yeah, a lot of these are defaulted right now, which is excellent. Custom depth, stencil pass. What this does is you can mask out certain objects in your scene where you won't have post processing affecting it. So you can either leave it as enabled, or you can enable with a stencil, where you use a stencil to mask out. We may use it, we may not, but it's always good to enable it, but you don't have to follow along with the tutorial. Default settings are fine. You have your exposure here, but we'll sort that out in engine once the level is loaded. Optimizations are fine. Default is fine. Debugging we don't need. Experimental's fine. Editor's fine. Yeah, editor's fine. You used to have to enable sky atmosphere affecting height fog, but it's defaulted enabled now. Cloud shadow on forward lit translucency, I am not 100% what that does. It's got to be some sort of glass reflectivity on volumes. If you know what this is, then you shouldn't be watching this video for one. But if you are watching it and you understand what this is, just leave a comment in the comment section below, let me know. Or a link where I can go and read about it myself. But we'll leave it off for now. Mobile note, skinning note, post-process collections, yeah, they're fine. So that is just the project settings on the rendering side of things for now, for this video. They're fine. What we're going to do now is go into, let's just save it quickly, a quick save, and then we shall go into the plugins. The first plugin I'm going to look for is Water. This is a relatively new system to Unreal Engine, especially Water Extras. I've not explored Water Extras, so I am going to enable it and enable the water feature itself. And to have water, the new water system working in tandem in your scene, you're going to need the landmass plugin, which we are going to use anyway, as the water system needs the landmass plugin to work efficiently and properly. But the landmass plugin itself has blueprints in there in which you can change the geometry of your landscape. that we will be going over that at some point in the channel. Next is a personal preference, volumetrics, if I can spell it right. Volume, there you go, volumetrics. I'm going to enable this. This just gives me shaders that I need to create a fog shader in future on this channel. So if you're thinking of fog shaders, then enable it yourself. And from there, what else do I want? Height field mesh. What height field mesh does is adds displacement to your landscape. So best way to describe it is if you hold your left hand up flat and your right hand flat and put it on top of your left hand. I'm actually doing it as well. Your left hand underneath the right hand is your landscape, and the right hand is your height field mesh. They look the same, they are the same thing, but it adds an extra layer on top in which it enables displacement. You'll see that in full flow in a later video. But for now, I think that is it for the plugins, so we'll close the plugins down. And now at this point, we can just restart the engine. Keep in mind that when you do restart the engine, that you will have to compile shaders. There's quite a lot of them. There will be quite a lot on my machine if I'm doing shaders, compiling shaders in a new project. It can take 15 to 20 minutes to complete. So depending on your machine, it could be less or it could be take longer. I'm afraid it's just one of them steps that we have to take when creating a new scene for environmental art or level design. I'm not going to restart my engine now. I could just close this down because, as I said at the beginning of the video, I've already created a scene already, so I don't have to do this waiting again. So I'll pause the video now, or shall I say I'll just skip to the next part where I'll see you there with your shaders have been compiled. Hey guys, right, okay, so hopefully by now your compilers have compiled and you're up in the scene like I am right now. If you see any white writing at the top left here saying compiling shaders, that means they're still compiling the shaders, and I would recommend waiting for them to finish before doing anything spectacular in your project. But for the rest who have compiled all their shaders and are sat here, then we can yet again fire up a new level. So what I'm going to do, let me check the folder structure. Let's get rid of these static meshes. To do this, I'll just remove that. To do this little drop down arrow, if you click on that and just enable the static mesh, and this will enable all the static meshes in that folder you've got selected. So if I click content, if I just click scene, my scene that we created, it won't have any because there's no static meshes in there. But if I click the status content, this is where your static meshes are. I'm going to be using this in a second. So we close that down. What we're going to do is click file again, new level. You have a few options here. You have open world, which is aimed towards making massive open worlds for games or even environments, but generally that is team based like a studio. But for us, we're just going to do a basic level. So we click on this, put create, and like I said earlier in the video, Epic have done a really good job up to now in preview 2 of setting up your scene. The clouds look half decent, well they're decent as they are, but apart from that they've done a really good job at setting it all up from the get-go. There is some changes we'll be making in this part of the tutorial which will enable more real-world lighting, as this is not that real-worlded. Yeah, so we will be making some changes, but now we've got our new level set up, what we are going to do is we're going to save this, and the map we created before you could just click on that and press save again, and what it's going to do is it's going to replace that empty level map we've created for the compilers, and we'll save over the top, and in the editor project settings where we added the map to the maps and modes, it'll just overwrite them, so every time you load up, like I said earlier, it will just load this level up now. What I'm going to do before I add anything of lighting or any kind of landscape is just create myself a little couple of rooms in which I'm going to go over a few basics. First of all, I'm going to get the sky atmosphere, the skylight and the volumetric clouds, and just put them underneath my floor so they don't get confusing. I have an exponential height fog, which is, I can't find it, there it is down there. The reason they've got it down there, I will quickly describe now. If you zoom out here, if you watch the horizon, the height fog, exponential height fog, is based off the actual level of the actor. So if I move this up, you'll see the fog is changing on the horizon, like so. If I move it down, it moves it all the way down. I'm going to keep it about there for now. That'll do fine. But I've got my directional light here, in which I can change the sun's direction and find the sun. Press E on the keyboard to get your rotation tool up, and there you go. You see, by default, your rotation grid snapping will be enabled, so your sun might do this. To obviously get rid of that, you just disable the rotation for the sun, and you'll then get a nice effect. For now, with your sun, just going to put this over there so it's in the clear blue sky. That's a nice cloud effect. That's what I mean. Epic have done a really good job setting this up. So I'll put that there for now. Getting carried away. What I am going to do, I'm going to quickly speed up the video and create just a couple of rooms here in which I could test a few things with lighting and the height fog and post-process. Where I'm going to use it, like I said before, is use these static meshes. If I go to the bottom, you'll see they have doors and walls and all that kind of jazz set up already. I am going to probably use the 400 by 400 if I can find it. What I do is drag one out. Sorry, pardon me. I'm going to drag the window, which is 400 by 400 window, and I'm just going to use the 400 by 400 standard wall if I can find it. There's a 400 by 400 wall. Oh, it's right there, highlighted. I'm going to drag that in there. I'm also going to drag a window frame in, and I'm also going to drag a door frame wherever that is. There it is, door frame, which I'm going to use. But for now, like I say, I'm not going to put you through the pain of watching me trying to build a couple of rooms to test lighting, so I will speed this video up. But yeah, so that's the little scene set up. What I'm going to do now is organise before the structure up a little bit. So I'm going to fire that into lighting. What I'm going to change this name. Oh, let me select it properly. I'm going to put environment lighting. So, environment dash lighting. Pardon me. I've got my floor there. Scroll down to the bottom. I know all these meshes from what I built here. And then I'm going to click the little plus icon at the top right and add this to a folder. So we'll static. I'll tell you what I will do. SM for static mesh, and then test building. And what that's going to enable, if I want to add a second floor or another kind of room that I think would better serve testing materials, I would structure it different, like SM test building 2, you know, just, and it keeps all this dead clear. So that's that for now. What I'm going to do now is concentrate on a few little elements. So I'm going to quickly sort out the post-processing. What I'm going to do is go to the top left here, visual effects, post-process volume, drag it in. With this, I'm going to put this under the world as well. And what I want to do first off is change this in the details panel here. See where it says infinite extend unbound. So I'm just dragging back up. You see the orange box, that's the post-processing bounds. You can change the actual size of this if you want, like so. So I could just add the post-processing effect inside this room, but there's no need for that. So I'll just move this right down under the thing and select this, and it'll affect the whole scene. The first thing I want to do in here is change the exposure. Exposure compensations of 1, so what that is doing is just adding exposure. So like this, watch the build up, that's exposure compensation. It's not realistic at all, it doesn't happen. I mean, if you cover your eyes for a minute and then uncover them, the exposure of the sun will affect you, but what, for 3 or 4 seconds. Like this, if I go in like this dark corner of the room and turn around, the exposure builds up, and I want to reduce that because it's not realistic. So with the compensation, I'm going to put 0. For the minimum and maximum, you just want to set them to 1 each. And now this is a more realistic lighting. Based on exposure, this is more realistic, which is quite cool. And it just basically helps a lot. Like you can see, there's no pixelated shadows anymore, or there's no crazy exposure happening. I can move the point light down a bit. Let's make sure I've got the point light selected. Select and just move this down a bit. Point light, generally the intensity is not 8 candelans. If you Google pretty standard dining room or living room brightness, it's actually depicted at 75 candelas, which is more realistic lighting. As you can see now, that lighting is coming through and affecting here. But that's that for now. Now the post-process volume. Where are you? We can drag this right up to the environment lighting. Close this off. So that, for me, is there's a bit of a glitch going on here. You can see the horizon's a bit funny, but if I come out, it's not. It's a bit of a weird thing that going on. I'm not sure what that is. But yeah, so I would use this for testing. One more change I'm going to make is directional light. As you can see, the intensity is 6 lux, but that's halfway there. Real world scale is about 20,000 brightness. from the sun, and that's a midday scale. You can Google this as well. It's like 20,000 minimum, actually it's like 20 to 50,000 brightness, but if you divide 20,000 into 2,000 into 1, and you get 6, so I'm looking at about lux of 12. This will give you a more realistic lighting for the sun at such an angle. I could change the sun's angle to directly above, and what that's going to do is really bounce around in here, really nice. So yeah, like I say, this is basically it for a scene setup. There's probably a few pointers that I've missed, but this is basically the start of what I would do. This little room to test materials out on the walls, and even just like on a plane, so basic shapes, put plane in here, do this, and I will just simply rotate it and scale it up a bit, and then I've got it there under the light, and I'd put a material on there and start editing it. It's really good, and you can simply rotate it around as well to get a different shade of light. But as a whole, I would say this is a setup scene. But yeah, so adding post-process volume, changing my lighting and the exposure, setting up a little room, testing materials out in here. And the reason I do this is because it's a small scene and you're not using too much computer power to test certain things, so compiling shaders would be a lot quicker than having a big landscaped scene. But apart from that, this is it for this. In the next video, I probably am going to switch over to the landscape mode and do a tutorial on landscapes, especially with the blueprints like in the Time-lapse plugin that we installed in this video, or added in this video. I will start by doing that, show you all about using the blueprints to create like deformities in the landscape and mountains, and from there we'll go on to maybe doing a material and such things like that. So if you found this video useful, it'd be appreciated if you could hit the subscribe and the like button, and follow along in my new journey on YouTube and sharing my workflow. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.